Hey, everybody. Top of the morning. Sorry, I'm not Jesse Cofield. I'm Emerson Lazia. But man, oh man, is this GoJo and Golic absolutely loaded with the good stuff. What's the good stuff, you ask? Welcome back. Anthony Richardson being promoted back to quarterback one, because with the Colts, the quarterback that gives them the best chance to win is the one who is not playing. NFC East showdown, rivalry renewed. We got Washington visiting the Eagles tonight. That's pretty sexy for a thirsty Thursday. Alien season. Wemby's first 50 burger of his career, but guess what? Someone else scored even more last night. All that and more coming up right meow with the dynamic Notre Dame loving duo, GoJo and Golic.
Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Lazia hanging out with us today. Newly mustached here. We're presented by Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal. And we got a great show for you. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Our new GoJo and Golic YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to that and comes and checks us out on there. Smash subscribe, hit the bell, all the stuff that the young influencers say here. Jason Fitz going to join us in the second hour of the show, usually with us on Wednesdays. Some travel, so going to join us today to react more to now the upcoming college football weekend, slate a little what's going on in the NFL. We've got space alien performances, as Emerson mentioned, in the NBA. The Talls last night decided to go do their thing. And oh, by the way, I'm in Scottsdale with you in the same room right now.
I have two things. First, it's very difficult. Like normally when you do that spiel, which I love, by the way, telling us everybody all the places they can see us and hear us. You're usually on a one shot. I can do work. We're stuck on a 2-shot. So whenever you're talking, I have to be paying attention. I don't want to be paying attention. Half the time I don't listen to you when you're talking.
I can see why, because we are 30 seconds into the show, and my mom just walked in with breakfast. Yeah. And now I understand why I usually watch your eyes dart off screen when I'm talking and give the little nod, because my mom's bringing you little eggies and little breakfast so you can get you yummy in your tummy.
Last I checked, there's 2 plates.
Oh, yeah, I got some this morning, too. It's great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I don't dig not getting my own time to do what I want because I have to be on because it's a 2-shot. And is Emerson newly mustached or is he newly beardless?
I mean, aren't they one and the same?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of both, boys. It's kind of both.
You had the mustache the whole time. It was just attached to a beard.
Yeah, you've got to grow it first in order to then have the mustache.
But, I mean, he shaved the beard, so I'd say he's more beardless. He had the mustache with the beard, and he shaved the beard.
You know what I will say is, Emerson, you're one of the few people that can pull off the mustache this way.
The porn look?
Yeah, well, no, he looks like a young Commissioner Gordon from the Batman movies.
Yeah. Or the dude in Spider-Man who pays Spider-Man to take pictures of Spider-Man. I look like that
Oh,
guy
yeah, you
too.
know what? That's more it. That is absolutely it. I forget his name right now. The guy that's the head of the Daily Bugle. Is that the paper there?
Yeah.
Either way,
is.
that's who Emerson looks like, the young version of that. And I am always of the ilk, like I think for men, as someone that used to rock a goatee, I think it's the worst thing that you can do to yourself facial hair wise. It's like guys having long hair. Everyone thinks they look better with it, but no one actually does. And I say this as someone that rocked a goatee very prominently during a lot of my college career. And I look back on it now the same way I look at my Affliction and Ed Hardy shirts from then, which is question my friends around me and the decisions they allowed me to make.
Well, you rocked a goatee and had a bushel head of hair, and you looked like an axe murderer. Then you had a goatee and you're bald, and you still look like an axe murderer.
Yes, I managed to somehow have that be the common through line. So maybe it's just my face. And I don't know how we got off on this tangent other than
it's my fault.
Yeah, no,
I
it is
didn't
your fault.
realize
It's
my
100% your
mustache
fault.
would cause all this drama.
It really is.
between
That lip
everybody.
tickler is distracting.
It's a
right
womb
now,
broom,
so.
bro. They call it a womb broom now.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. Well, we're already in a
Okay.
place that I didn't want to be here. I apologize to the YouTube audience. And we're going to go and shift this thing back away from Emerson and his bedroom activities, which are going to stay firmly unwanted in our text message thread.
It's too late. It's in my head now. It's just too late.
Can I get it out of your head with this audio clip from Colts head coach Shane Steichen, who had a big decision to make this week in the AFC South? Joe Flacco, it hadn't been sweet out there. The last couple of games hadn't been great for the Indianapolis Colts. Even after Shane Steichen had said Joe Flacco was going to be the quarterback for the remainder of the season. It's why such broad declarations are probably not a great idea, but Shane Steichen's a coach still early in his tenure as a head man working through all this. So how did we get to the point where Anthony Richardson's back at the starter? Let's hear from Coach.
Like I said, we've never lost faith or belief in him and his abilities, and he's shown strides. He really has. And with that being said, he will be our starter again. He's going to start this week. He's going to start the rest of the season. All right, and we're going to go from there. And I informed Joe of the decision yesterday. He's the ultimate pro. He respects the decision, understands it.
All right, so he respects the decision. He understands it. Dad, is it the right one at this point?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely the right one. Listen, and I understand him saying when he announced Joe Flacco as the starter that he said for the rest of the year. I think you have to. You can't just say, well, a game or two and we'll see how you do. It just leaves too much to chance, but we all know that's the reason. We all know that it's only going to be a game or two if he doesn't produce, and he and the offense didn't produce. They're 4-6. They're within a couple of games of Houston, who's 6-4, though Houston has beaten Indy twice. And we know the wild card race is kind of a long game in the AFC. And Joe wasn't getting it done. And Anthony Richardson adds more to the offense. While if Joe was winning, Joe would still be the quarterback. So I get now, in all honesty, they need to stick with Anthony Richardson.
Yes.
Even if he is playing bad, they need to stick with him. But because Joe wasn't, and again, it's not just Joe, but Joe was the leader of this offense, and the offense wasn't producing. So you can look at certain situations and say Jonathan Taylor has a better rushing average when Anthony Richardson is out there. When Anthony Richardson is under pressure as opposed to Joe Flacco, Anthony Richardson can escape pressure. So he can do things better than Joe. But again, if Joe was winning and throwing touchdowns and not interceptions, he'd still be starting. So I get Shane saying Joe was going to start for the rest of the year. You have to go in with that attitude. But now that you made the change, you have to stay with Anthony Richardson the rest of the year.
And it's just kind of been weird the way this has all been framed, because obviously for a while there was talk about, are the Colts a fringe playoff contender or someone that could make a deep run? And I don't think either of us ever agreed that was the case.
No.
But if you had a team that was close, because the AFC South is what it is,
Right.
and certainly because the AFC playoff picture, especially in the wild card, is what it is, do you owe it to the rest of the roster to at least try there? And I think what we ultimately landed on with is Joe Flacco and the run that happened last year with the Cleveland Browns. Probably a little bit of an outlier this late in his career. That Browns roster also a lot more talented overall than this Colts roster. That was one that most people said last year looked like a Super Bowl roster going into it. They just needed competent quarterback play and weren't getting it from Deshaun Watson. And so I think this is one of those where from here on out, we probably just need to hear a lot less from everybody involved. Like Shane Steichen, was this about competition on the field? Was this about Anthony Richardson getting the chance to sit and learn more? Was it all the above? Either way, it seems like Anthony Richardson has taken the right messaging out of this, saying, hey, I got to focus on my preparation more like this coaching staff wanted. And now, to your point, they go back out there and start this thing off, Dad, by leaning into their identity. Like you mentioned the Jonathan Taylor rushing splits with him on the field and with him off the field, meaning Anthony Richardson, and it's not insignificant. It's almost a yard per carry difference better with Anthony Richardson on the field because you've got a quarterback that's a zone read threat. And so I think you've got to continue to lean into that in the intermediacy and then go back to all the stuff that you thought Shane Steichen in this offense would fit well with Anthony Richardson to begin with. Heavy ground game, RPO game, and build the rest of the house off that foundation.
And they're at the Jets, so certainly a winnable game, though the Jets defense is a good defense, no doubt about that. Then they're home to the Lions, and then they're at New England, which is playing better, and then they have a bye. But again, do we think they're a playoff team? Probably not, but can they make the playoffs? The way the AFC is laying out, they certainly have a chance. I don't think they will. And I think it's different in different situations. We're going to get to another situation in Chicago. But I do think it's different. I never mind when you start like he started last year, played 4 games and got hurt, but he was a starter. And I have no problem with a team where there aren't the high expectations with a rookie quarterback to start them and start their clock. But then if they struggle, if the team's still playing bad, I still see you leaving them in, unless they just start to look lost.
Right,
out
if they're
there.
drowning.
If they're drowning, you let them sit.
Young early in this
exactly.
season.
So you let them sit. Other than that, I'd let them play through it. But if your rookie quarterback is struggling and your team is in it, then you owe it to the team to make a change, like I think Shane Steichen did, to give it a shot with Joe Flacco. Didn't work. You go back to the young quarterback.
I'm going to be honest. I still think at the core of this, in an honest moment, more of this was about Anthony Richardson needing to do better behind the scenes,
right,
sending the message to the locker room about accountability after he took himself out of the game. I still think a lot more of this, and maybe they didn't want to message it publicly that way. Maybe they didn't want to rub his nose in it or anything like that. But I do think a lot more of this is about Anthony Richardson because, again, we talk about this in NFL locker rooms all the time. I was on 105.3 with the guys in Dallas the other day and started asking about this season and how you respond in the locker room. So, Dad, I'd be curious for your expectation as someone that's lived through a lot of seasons and candidly lived through disappointing ones during Philadelphia, where the playoffs weren't on the table by season's end, of how guys in the locker room sort of respond in these situations. Because I think everyone in the Colts locker room is smart enough to see, all right, our ceiling probably a little bit limited right now. We know Anthony Richardson's supposed to be the future here. And so if I'm Quentin Nelson, if I'm the guys on the offensive line there, it's let me redouble my focus on what I need to do to try and help make this team successful. Let's hope we get the best version of Anthony Richardson in terms of his approach. And then we got to take the results for what they are as they come, understanding we're trying to grow into what we're eventually going to be and lay a foundation for the team that we can be.
We went through that, not with young quarterbacks, but with older quarterbacks. Randall Cunningham was coming off the knee injury the following year, and we had Jim McMahon as the quarterback.
Right.
And there was a point during the season where Jim was playing and Randall wasn't, and there was kind of a divide in the locker room. People thought Randall should be back at the helm, and we were winning, so there were others that were like, Jim should stay at quarterback. So there was kind of that. And they asked the defensive side, and our stock line was, whoever moves the hell the ball down the field.
Yeah, we do not care.
Doesn't matter to us at all. Whoever moves, and I think that was it. While I agree with you that was a message to Anthony Richardson about pulling himself, but he wasn't playing well. Though I'll say, if Joe Flacco had led him to a couple of wins, Joe Flacco would still be the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100%.
It's all in the mix. They lost the 2 games that Joe was playing, so you go back to Anthony.
Yeah, no, I certainly don't think there's a binary in this situation. And Joe Flacco's play, I think, quite honestly, made the decision easier to get back to what it should be. The focus should be on Anthony Richardson right now, developing him to be your quarterback of the future so that you're not in franchise limbo the way we've talked about some of the other teams getting ready for really brutal off seasons. Like the next team that we're going to talk about, Emerson, we mentioned the New York Jets already. they're a team in a very interesting situation based on how badly this year's gone and who they have put stock in. And the future of their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, is something that I think becomes the most important storyline for them this offseason. And we did hear from him about that yesterday.
Yeah, for sure, man. So he's on the back nine of his career. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. He's off to his worst 10-game start in his 17 seasons as an NFL starting quarterback. But despite the Jets coming out of the gates super hot at 3-7 this season, when asked if he still wants to play next year, Gojo, he said, and I quote, "I think so, yeah." So, Gojo, you think the Jets even want him back?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering in an honest moment is if you're a Jets fan, would your hope be that Aaron Rodgers decides to maybe hang up the cleats at this point? Because when you look and assess this season, there are a lot of things wrong with this Jets roster, but certainly one of them has been the quarterback has looked more his age than we expected. And there was always this wonder coming off of injury, could Aaron Rodgers recapture something closer to the 2021 version of himself from earlier in that than what we saw in the final year in Green Bay coming off these injuries? And he's had flashes of those moments, but I do think father time is something that comes for everyone, especially a guy whose calling card was how incredibly impactful his physical abilities were on his game. And so if Aaron Rodgers isn't 100% of himself, are you banking on this roster with another year, maybe having time to gel in a way that improves this situation enough? Or are you ready to burn this whole thing down?
I think they burn the whole thing down. He's got one more year on his deal. I think it's a $23 million cap hit. I'm not positive of the numbers, but that's what I thought I had seen. But just from the play standpoint, I don't see, I mean, is Jeff Albert going to be back, number one? Or are they going to have a brand new coach and all new coaches? So if you're going to start with all new coaches, I think you just kind of restart the whole thing. I mean, Devontae Adams probably won't be there. You have Garrett Wilson, you have Breece Hall. You keep improving that offensive line. Tyron Smith may not be there. You really kind of loaded up for this year,
right?
And it didn't work. So some of the older talent you could say goodbye to, and I think you have to start again, because you're right. His physical gifts are what set his accuracy is beyond ridiculous. But his ability to escape, his ability to make a play on the move, his ability to make a play from the pocket, it's not what it was. As Emerson said, it's his worst start in 10 games of his 17-year career. So I think it's time to just kind of restart the engines.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like at GoJo Golic on Twitter, if you're a Jets fan, are you ready to begin whatever the next phase looks like, knowing that this was what felt like your one shot?
Well, I don't think a Jet fan will think it would be different next year. He'd be a year older. I don't know what the difference would be.
Well, maybe the thought process is you're a year older, but you've got more continuity with the weapons. You've got another year under your belt where the offensive line could be a group that gels a little bit better, or some of that young talent like Olu that you drafted starts to come on a little bit more. Are there anything, because I remember going into the season, I had this conversation with our buddy David Hellman over at Fox about what realistic expectations are for the Jets. And unfortunately, realistic and what you brought Aaron Rodgers there to do were very wildly far apart. Like, what you brought him there to do was bring you to a Super Bowl, and what this roster was capable of was probably always closer to this than most of us wanted to admit. Even though I was wrong, I'll put my hand up, and I thought they were going to be a team that was able to make the playoffs in the AFC East this year. And so I just look at that situation and wonder, all right, would it be better with the benefit of time? But I think you bring up the more impactful part is I can think about that in the football, really focusing in micro on the picture. But we're talking about probably picking a new head coach. I don't know if Jeff Ulbricht's going to get a new look at that or not.
I agree.
And then how you just go about your offseason. Aaron Rodgers was the one who was at the very least heavily influencing the decisions that were made for this team. If you're bringing in a new regime, you're probably not letting Aaron Rodgers call the shots for the next iteration of Jets football with a head coach, a coordinator who was his hire, really, and Nathaniel Hackett, who stayed on. So all of those major decisions, is Aaron going to want to stick around knowing that his words probably wouldn't carry as much weight because of how this season has gone? I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, I think the situation is leaning toward he would be gone and it would be a fresh start. Now, what comes into play is, where do they pick in the draft? What quarterback's available? If they don't go for a rookie, what veteran quarterback do they bring in? What's out there as opposed to bringing him back? But I have a feeling, because the coaching staff, I think, is going to be be new. I'd love to see Jeff Ulbrich get the shot, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think with it all being new, I think you start anew at the quarterback position, and you don't saddle a new coach, probably a young coach, with an older quarterback who's probably only going to be there for a year.
Yeah, again, the Jets, the first team this season to fire their head coach during the year, and so I'm sure that front office and that ownership group have already been thinking about what are we looking for, what are we trying to identify in our next head coaching candidate. And you're right, understanding that we've seen already a team like Chicago getting in trouble because you've got a coach and a quarterback on different timelines. That's always a difficult task in the NFL if both aren't starting off at or near the same leg. And Aaron Rodgers said it himself before the season, if things go south, we're probably all going to lose our jobs. And so that's happened with the head coach. We'll see what happens with the quarterback future there. Coming up next, though, dare I say it? We might have a banger on Thursday night. Al Michaels, someone alert him. This may work.
Back here on GoJo and Golic, everybody. I am Emerson Latzia. I teased it at the top of this show. A rivalry renewed on Thursday Night Football. Time to deliver on said tease. Fun little NFC East matchup tonight. We've got the Commanders visiting the Eagles. These are two elite NFC offenses. Fun facts here, GoJo. JAYDEN Daniels has been outstanding on the road this year. 76.9% completion percentage. Nice. 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. Here's the thing. Here's the question I'm asking. Can Washington generate enough of a running game here against a defense that has allowed just 100 yards rushing one time through this 5-game win streak, man? It's going to be a hell of a game tonight.
It should be a hell of a game. Like, it's nice. I mean, we joked about it, but Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit have been fed a steady diet of bad football during most of Thursday night. But I will say, and this still has a chance, we know the injury report is ultimately what's going to dictate this, and Thursday Night Football, because of the short turnaround, does find a way to be sloppy. But Dad, the Washington Commanders on one side have been one of the darling stories of the early season. Dan Quinn and JAYDEN Daniels pulling off what we got from D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud so far in terms of quarterback and first-year head coach coming together to make magic happen. But on the other side, Philadelphia, and especially the young pieces on their defense, as Philadelphia has turned over so many leaders on both sides of the ball in the last couple of years, they had to go out there and hit on some draft picks. And now when you're starting to look between the secondary with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, the second-year guys like Jalen Carter, really the Georgia contingency. I saw Dan Orlovsky said this the other day on one of the ESPN shows. We're probably not talking enough about the fact that most of the battery in the front seven for the Philadelphia Eagles is the Georgia defense from the 2021 National Championship team. So freakish there. And then this offense has a clear identity behind Saquon Barkley in this offensive line, but A.J. Brown certainly been the catalyst since he's come back.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Eagle fans are still cautious because they were 10-1 last year,
right,
and then folded. So while they're 7-2, I think.
But it feels different, doesn't it? This year,
the biggest difference to me.
We knew it was living on a prayer last time around.
The biggest difference to me is the defense. What you mentioned, Vic Fangio running the defense now. They didn't take care of the linebacker position last year. They had injuries in the secondary. They're a little more healthy this year. Young players are stepping up. You mentioned that D-line with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter on the interior, the two Georgia guys. Obviously, Nakobe Dean at linebacker. But I think the defense, which is second overall in yards given up, third against the pass, fifth against the rush, they are very formidable this year. And I think that's been a monster difference. That too much, I think they're playing, to not use a word that's used all the time, they are actually playing complementary football.
Yes.
Last year, it was really left to the offense, and they fumbled the ball at times because the defense was too injured. So now they're meshing well together. So it does feel different than last year when they were 10-1. Now, again, you have to stay healthy. It's still half the season or so to go for the plans of Philadelphia, obviously, to go deep in the playoffs and make a run. So I do think it is a different-looking team, and I think specifically because of the defense.
Now, I will say the defense is going to face a different test this time around because you look at the 6-game run they've been on. Since the loss to Tampa Bay, the eye-popping numbers for them on defense. They've been first in total defense, first in pass defense, second in rush defense, and second in sacks with 19 since their loss to Tampa Bay, averaging under 10 points a game surrendered. But you look at the competition that's been against, and it's been the Browns, the Giants, the Bengals, the Jags, and the Cowboys. So it's not exactly a murderer's row of teams. And so getting this Washington Commanders offense, then the Rams, and then the Ravens that they have up next, I think going to be more of a checkup from the neck up for where this defense is actually at. But I do think they've made strides enough. And going against a rookie on the other side who, hey, this Washington offense, the rushing attack has been the story of it. And so Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and those guys are going to be at the forefront of this. I still look on the other side, though, Dad, because you talked about the differences between last year and this year and how it feels and why it's more sustainable. I think the talk after last year was trying to diversify and find more answers, bringing Kellen Moore over here to see if you could give Jalen Hurts more answers against the blitz, things like that. And I think they found some of those, but they've also just redoubled their efforts on the ground game. This has always been a team with Jalen Hurts that's been led by the ground game. I think he's certainly healthier. His place in the run game is different. He's not as dynamic a threat east and west as he used to be. But between that and what Saquon Barkley affords you and what this offensive line's been able to do, there's some people think Lane Johnson's been playing like the best tackle in football so far this season. And once A.J. Brown came back, now that Jalen Hurts has someone, really both guys, him and Devonta Smith, that he could trust down the field again, this seems sustainable with the Eagles on offense. And so I think especially against a Washington defense that struggles to defend the run and has been one of the worst in the league at that, I think the Eagles, who are 3.5-point favorites in this game, I think can win by more than that.
First time both teams at least 4 games over 500 meeting each other since 1996.
Whoa.
So Washington certainly a surprise this year. I don't think many analysts, I know we didn't have them up near the top of the division, obviously being led by a rookie quarterback who has been a standout. Dan Quinn helping turn that defense around. The biggest surprise to me, and I sound like a broken record on it, is the offensive line. playing well on pieces that were put together. I thought, wow, I don't know how this is going to mesh, but it's meshed together pretty well. But I do think the Eagles' defense, Emerson, is playing very, very strong right now.
This was just an opportunity, guys, to tease ahead to pregame power-up tonight on DraftKings Network. I'm working on an incredible piece, okay, with producer Slates and Billy about the history Jayden Daniels is making. We haven't even touched it yet, but we will touch it tonight on pregame power-up.
I'm just glad you're staying away from the Philadelphia Eagles fans after the last time you had them in the pregame power up there. I can't believe they're letting you anywhere near this game considering the slanderous things that you said about the people of Philadelphia.
I got like 3 likes on YouTube on that video, man. People are loving it. I'm a man of the people.
3 whole likes. Wow.
Yeah, that's right, buddy.
Piece.
Yeah, super successful.
Terrifying. So check that out, 6 o'clock Eastern, wherever you get the DraftKings Network, the pregame power-up with our buddy Emerson Latzia, Trey Wingo, Claudia Bellafato, Marshall Newhouse. The gang's all there, and they've got a lot to talk about. So, Dad, we've mentioned some of the things that have changed for Philadelphia this year. Obviously, for Dan Quinn coming over, Jayden Daniels and his performance behind that offensive line you mentioned. What's the thing you're most looking forward to tonight in this game? What do you think has the biggest impact on who ends up winning?
Oh, I think, again, the way Vic Fangio has this defense playing against the rookie quarterback. Because at times he had, now not many times compared to how he's looked, he has looked like a rookie. Not many times. Again, he has been stellar and leading for offensive rookie of the year. I would think he is still the favorite for that. But I'm interested to see how that Eagles defense plays, because the one thing Washington does, they mix the run and the pass well. Terry McLaurin is obviously having a hell of a year. Zach Ertz making some big catches too, though
turning back the clock.
Though half yard short last week on his 4th down play. That's the matchup I look for, the Eagles defense and the way they're playing against this rookie quarterback. Vic Fangio has been in the league a long time. He's faced a whole lot of quarterbacks and a lot of rookie quarterbacks. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he chooses to defend against Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, the defense for Philadelphia is not overly complicated. You need the front 7 to go to work, and you need corners that can hold up in coverage. And now that he's got those guys, especially with the way Cooper DeJean's come on, both as a tackler, as a runner, he's a guy you got to be careful and read the scouting report for, because obviously Cooper DeJean is playing, he's not quite full outside corner where people wanted to see him, which is where he was in college. I know Dominique Foxworth and Bomani Jones went to war for the fact that Cooper DeJean should be allowed to play corner in the NFL. They shouldn't take the easy way out with the white corner and just slide him into safety. And so there's been the compromise of him at the nickel spot. But, Dad, you got him returning punts right now. Like, it's like Pat Connaughton mode out here, where if you don't read the scouting report, you might get embarrassed because the dude's a legitimate athlete.
Yeah, he absolutely is. I'm also looking at the interior of the D-line for Philly pushing straight ahead. And the key is going to be not letting Jayden get outside. Every time I'm calling a game and I see the defense lose contain on a quarterback, it just blows my mind, especially your running quarterbacks, to let them escape. And Philly will get the push from the middle with especially a Jalen Carter who just takes off like a bolt from the interior. But between him and Jordan Davis getting a push up the middle, you can't let Jayden Daniels escape to the outside. It's always a tough situation when you talk about rush lane integrity of the front 4. If you're going to bring 4, that somebody has to have contained, somebody has to rush through the B gap and the A gap to keep contained, so you don't give a place for the quarterback to step up and out, and you don't give them the outside escape route. But it's more difficult to keep integrity when you want to get a good pass rush. Sometimes you have to go out of your lane to get a good pass rush, and you don't want to be kind of harnessed or reined in to just stay right in your pass lane. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, I think, and both these quarterbacks sort of present that challenge,
right,
which is important for these two teams. So, all right, Dad, I think the Eagles win. I think they cover in this one. Do you agree?
I agree. I just think they're playing too well right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
And then I guess where we go from here, because Washington, I mean, this is a game that right now looks like it's for who's going to win the division ultimately. We've waved goodbye to the Cowboys as Dak Prescott's had surgery on that hamstring. We know the Giants, we're having more talk about them and potentially being in the race for the top overall pick. And so Coming off this game, Dad, if the Eagles do win this one, and as we look at this one, we know the Eagles have always been an incredibly talented roster. When it's been fully healthy, it's looked great. Is this a team in the current NFC picture that can actually make a deep playoff run again like we saw 2 years ago?
Oh, I absolutely think, because I don't think the NFC is very deep. Now, San Francisco's getting Christian McCaffrey back, which is obviously huge for them. They're going to get healthy at the right time if they can stay healthy. So I think that they eventually take over the West, though. Arizona is just, Kyler Murray is just playing out of his mind, and they have weapons on the offensive side of the ball. So certainly keep an eye on them. I still don't fear anybody in the NFC South. I just don't. And right now in the North, you got 3 teams in. Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay. I mean, it's Minnesota, Green Bay, and actually Washington right now that are the wild cards. The NFC South isn't going to get a wild card, and then the NFC West, we'll see. They're just on the outside looking in as far as a wild card is concerned. So I think I mean, could we make an argument that Philly's? I think you can. Philly's the second best team in the NFC. Behind Detroit.
Well, they're currently number 2 in the playoff picture, right behind Detroit in the NFC.
And we know that always doesn't mean, because a lot of people maybe think San Francisco could be that team because of them getting healthy. But I think legitimately Philadelphia is the second best team in the NFC.
I think the way they're playing right now, because to me, for them, it's a lot like what we talk about with Buffalo, where they can make football very simple.
Right.
The difference is they've got 2 dynamic receiving weapons on the outside that Buffalo would saw off their right arm for at this point. And that changes the math on this. When A.J. Brown's been on the field, they've won all their games this year. We've seen the connection with him and Jalen Hurts. But I do think right now the way they're playing, because to me that's more about, hey, a little bit of the bloom is off the rose with the Minnesota Vikings offense, where now we've seen multiple weeks where Sam Darnold's looked a little bit more human. The turnovers have started back up here. There's been struggles to put the ball in the end zone on offense, even with Justin Jefferson still out there. That injury with Christian Darrisaw, I think, looms pretty large in how that line's been shuffled. And so that has opened up this spot for Philadelphia, where I do think, though, there's a gap. Like, Detroit right now does seem heads and tails above the rest of the NFC.
They really do. They're just playing some excellent ball right now. So I think there's a gap there. I think the surprise team to keep an eye on is the Cardinals.
Well, I think it's, to me, just the NFC West in general. But
I mean, I think
I
tried. The Rams laid an absolute egg against Miami.
They did. It was a missed opportunity, but I said it after that game, and I do think going forward, the Rams there, getting Jonah Jackson and Steve Avila back on the offensive line at center and left guard, that group looked a little out of sorts against a defensive line from the Dolphins that played really well. Anthony Weaver had a great third down package ready for that game. Was that, hey, you got to weather the storm where a couple of guys coming back off IR are going to look a little bit rusty early on, but say the ceiling that they give us, Emerson, is ultimately going to be a lot higher. And if you give them a couple of weeks to get back in form, that team could still be dangerous.
Few recognizable names on that Arizona Cardinals defense, though, guys. It hasn't allowed a touchdown in 3 consecutive home games. That's all of October and November. That's pretty damn impressive.
You're right. I mean, and there aren't the recognizable names. You talk about the offense, what Kyler Murray is doing. James Conner is running like a man. I mean,
he's been great. They've been a team that kind of like Washington has outperformed expectations. I think up front there, especially, and Kyler Murray has taken that next step in his maturation as a quarterback. The pairing with him and Drew Petzing, the offense having an offseason now healthy after the back half of last year to go and get used to all of this with a couple of targets that he can trust. We're seeing the best out of him, so you're right. He's probably the most talented quarterback in that division, and he gives them a chance every week. Coming up next, though, if we're going to talk about talent, God, we have to talk about the NBA from last night. The Talls were balling. Next on GoJo and Golic.
A lot of pigskin coverage throughout the show up to this point, but dudes were balling out on the hardwood last night in the association. A historic evening, might I add. So, two freaks of nature going for at least 50 points, right? Wemby, first 50-burger in his young, up-and-coming career. Meanwhile, the Greek freak going for 59. So this is just the 25th day, GoJo, in NBA history that has featured two players scoring at least 50 points. Was there a performance between those two that stood out more to you?
Well, Dan, I think I always lean towards Wemby just because he's a young guy still trying to figure it out, and these moments to me represent hope that his continued development. I saw Bobby Marks was on SportsCenter this morning talking about, hey, I'd love to see this in a competitive game with playoff hopes on the line in March of this year. And I think everything we see from him is a reminder, going all the way back to what we saw from him with France in the Olympics. This is what he's got under the hood more often than not. We know for the Spurs, there's been tumult already this season. Greg Popovich recovering from a stroke a while back that's kept him out, and we certainly wish him well. But as that team has had to weather the storm without him, seeing these bright spots from Victor, to me, is a reminder of what's coming from him. So I'll always overweight that.
Oh, I will. And Giannis has had 50 before.
Yes.
Right? And Giannis has shown he's one of the best players in the league before. Wemby is just starting out. We keep talking about his defensive prowess, but how about his three-point shooting? 8 of 16.
Right.
I mean, so seeing the big man, now we knew he could shoot, but seeing him hit 8 threes, 29 shots, 18 to 29, and he got to the free throw line, I think just 9 times. Giannis got there 17. He had 16 of 17 from the free throw line. So Wemby didn't do a lot of his from the free throw line, did a lot of his from the three-point line, getting his 50. So I agree. There have been younger players who have scored 50.
Sure.
But he's the youngest center to have ever scored 50.
Yeah, I'd say the youngest center to have ever scored 50 and doing it on the back of 8 3-pointers is certifiably bat bleep crazy. And I think that's what we have expected from him, though. And it's interesting, the context for Giannis on the other side, none of the other stars for the Milwaukee Bucks were on the court that night.
Right.
And so for him, it was a bit of a throwback to when he was a man on an island going out there and getting it done on his own, which, and Doc Rivers kind of alluded to this, where Giannis in the first quarter had 22 of their 24 points, and Doc's like, I kind of panicked because we need other people to show up and get involved. I'm like, brother, who else is out there at this point right now when you're talking about the real core of your team? But it does underscore, for a team that has struggled out of the gate now the way Milwaukee has, for this success to come in a game without the rest of those guys. I don't want to say it feels counterproductive, and I think part of this is the weight of, hey, Giannis has already got the MVP hardware, the championship hardware, so we grade him on a different curve than we're grading for Wemby. But I do think with Giannis, part of the concern is like, all right, well, we need you to be able to do this with the other guys on the court. We need to see the more high-end production from you with Dame out there on the court and the rest of the players on this team, so that we can start to get a gauge for what this could be if they can rally over the course of a long season and become a playoff contender. It's
been a big if, right, since Dame has been there with the three, if you want to put Chris Middleton in that, who has been out, Dame now out. I kind of, the modern day era of that is the 76ers, right, with Paul George missing the beginning of the season, and B just starting to play and not looking good, Maxey out. So you get guys together and you can't get them to play together. Now we're on the second year of trying to talk about the cohesiveness and the chemistry of the Milwaukee Bucks team, that Giannis goes off, nobody else on the court. They're still 4-8. So I just don't have a lot of high hopes for them in the Eastern Conference. I just think there's too many other good teams.
No, I would agree.
Though there's only a couple of teams above 500.
I was going to say,
the
Eastern Conference is a lot more accessible than its Western Conference counterpart.
It is, but do you see Milwaukee, making a run? We keep saying if they're all healthy, but we don't see it.
I think that's why we've gravitated towards Wemby's performance in terms of like who was more impressive, because it represents hope. Where with Milwaukee right now, we still feel like this team is probably past their best days in terms of Giannis and the current core of this roster. Obviously, Dame Lillard wasn't a part of that. Whereas with Wemby, we can kind of keep wondering about, all right, as he continues to do better, there's room for him to develop. You hear, and I mean, again, part of it is demeanor with him too. He seems like a guy that's wired the right way to keep making progress. And so his feels like it's on the uptick of something. With Milwaukee, this just feels like, all right, this is a button we know Giannis can press at any given time. But they were also down, 18 points in this game that he had to come back from after that flagrant foul. So it doesn't feel like it instills you with a lot of confidence.
And while it's young in the season, San Antonio is showing in the record, by their record improvement, they're 6-6. You know, as opposed to
which is what you wanted to see, right? This team actually improved and become more competitive.
And to put the facts of the others who were younger to score 50, Wemby's the fourth youngest to score 50. All four are in their 21st year. They're 20 years and X days old. The youngest is Brandon Jennings, then LeBron James, and then Devin Booker, and then Wemby. So those are the four youngest, all 20 and some days old.
Yeah, decently there. So if we're talking about the young guys there going and pulling that off here, we might as well swing the opposite side, because last night you could argue the most impressive performance came from the old guy, Emerson. Almost 40-year-old LeBron James continuing to just stack numbers.
Yeah, for sure, man. So listen to this. In November 2019, guys, LeBron posted triple-doubles in 3 consecutive games, right? At that time, he was 34 years young. No player that old had ever recorded 3 consecutive triple-doubles. And then the guy goes out and does it last night. And then he was asked after the game here, Gojo, about how long he envisions performing like at this level. And he says, I'm not playing until the wheels fall off. Question is, how soon until the wheels fall off? Seems like this guy just can't be stopped.
Bro, those wheels are latched on tight right now. They're getting plenty of traction. The tires are still catching great. It's passing, what is it, the quarter or the penny test when you put it in the tread to tie and see how much tread is left on those? Yeah. LeBron, you're getting plenty of clearance on that, brother. Jesus Christ.
I mean, and what the dude spends, what, $1.5 million a year on his training, his nutrition.
Looks great.
But And he's such a lightning rod of conversation, right? Because people always want to compare him to Michael Jordan. There are those that will never give LeBron the benefit of the doubt. There are those that are younger people that say he's better than Michael Jordan. But he is a hot-button topic for his play, right? Because he dishes instead of sometimes taking the last shot.
I don't know if he is anymore. Like, I think he single-handedly broke that argument enough to where we don't have it anymore.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous what an athlete he is and how well he's playing at 39, going to be 40 years old. Obviously, we have those in other sports like Tom Brady, but Tom Brady, listen, Tom Brady plays the most physical sport in football, but he's the quarterback, so he's not in a collision every single play. But still, to do what Tom did is unbelievable. But the athletic ability and the physicality of what LeBron has to go through and is still, I mean, in one of the best in the league is incredible. I mean, you just have to marvel at it.
You do. And so he's become the stable part of this conversation, I think, Dan.
Yeah.
Now, part of this is the Lakers and their station in the league early in the season at this point. Anthony Davis was the story, playing as well as he did.
Right.
Injury come up a little bit in his story there. And so LeBron James, again, doesn't feel overly controversial at this point. Now, the thing that I saw that did seem yesterday was talking about Bronny and what we heard from Brian Windhorst and the guys in the Hoop Collective, that apparently he's not playing road games for the G League team with the Lakers. And we've known this is always a unique situation. We talked early, them getting on the court together was fine and great. But now this, Dad, you've talked about a lot, the development of Bronny into a guy that can be a pro. Didn't get that all in his 1 year of college at USC last year, and we thought coming over here, all right, hey, listen, we know he's going to get called up to the show early on. The game's the game with that.
Right.
But now let him go to work with the G League team, with the South Bay Lakers, and try and actually improve his game to give him a shot. This seems like it works counter to that.
I don't understand it. And is it because of that they're flying commercial? I mean, and his notoriety and just what it would. I'm still trying to figure out the reason. And if that's the reason, I can't believe it. I mean, his development should be the most important thing. And I don't just mean for Bronny James. I mean, any draft pick or any player that's playing in the G League. You're playing in the G League because you're not yet good enough to play in the NBA. And you're supposed to develop in the G League. How do you develop by playing half the games? I do not understand this one.
So I saw there's a piece from Joe Varden in The Athletic talking about this, and this was originally reported again by Brian Windhorst, who's obviously been close to covering LeBron for a long time. But according to The Athletic, the source close to Bronny, who confirmed ESPN's reporting that the young James would only play home games in the G League, said simply that this was the, quote, decision made with regard to LeBron's son. So they didn't offer any more color on this, which is interesting. Is it something that's a response to the fame, being such an outsized celebrity for that location that they would feel like something with his security was compromised or anything? They didn't even offer those reasons up here. Instead, what we've got is a guy who already is coming in with the microscope. And this is the part where I'd love to know, and maybe they're protecting from this, I don't know, what Bronny's influence on this situation is versus LeBron, versus JJ, and everyone else in the organization. Because if I'm Bronny coming into this situation, it's strange. And as someone that's walked into a building with a dad that's been doing the job at an incredibly high level in a place and has made a name for himself, you go in and you're like, all right, I kind of just want to try and be able to work as much like everybody else as possible.
Right.
Go out here and not have this interrupted. And so if I'm Bronny, being one of the guys would sort of be paramount to how you go and try and make your own name in this league that's already such an uphill battle. And I don't feel like this does him any favors on that front when he's already got the bullseye in his back. Again, it's not to disparage the player. I don't know Bronny James and how he approaches all. By all accounts, he's been an incredibly professional young man with his approach to this. He's approached the game of basketball the right way overall, but this is one of those spots from that interpersonal side of it going into your new organization and your new life as a pro. I don't think this does him any favors.
For Brian Windhorst saying, from my understanding, he's only going to play in the South Bay Lakers home games, that he's only going to be a part-time G League player. He's not getting on a United Airlines and going to fly and go see these other teams play in those road games.
Yeah, that line from Brian was the interesting one there, referencing that idea of like the commercial travel element.
And again, we do not know where the decision came from. Maybe Bronny is saying, I want to go play all the games, and they're not. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
So this is a general conversation of he should be allowed to go play all the games. I just don't. I can't fathom the reasoning for not. And you're right, because he can now fly under the radar. Right? Everybody thought, oh, he's up too early, but it's his father's son. I get it. I think it was phenomenal, because it was the only time it happened in the NBA. I think it was a phenomenal thing. But now he has to go develop as a player. And it's under the radar in the G League. It doesn't have the notoriety of the NBA. I just can't comprehend why he isn't playing in every game.
Emerson, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, shouldn't the Lakers come out and address this? Like, why is this kid receiving this kind of special treatment this early on? Like, why is the league optically, like you just said, Senior, we kind of really have no idea. It would be nice if they would address it, because on the surface, it makes no sense to give this dude special treatment this early on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all knew, like, to some extent, he was going to get special treatment. We understood that was kind of part of the game with how this whole thing went. But I do think also the way we talked about this early on, the appearance on court with LeBron, the fact that they got that done early in that game, early in the season, to try and say, hey, we understand that this is history. It's important to the most important player in our franchise right now. And so we want to go out there and make this happen. It was objectively cool for so many people. But now after that, I think the whole goal was avoiding this being a sideshow that distracts from the team too much. And now to Emerson's point, I do wonder if the Lakers are going to have to address this. They're going to get asked about it. It's at least some, I'm sure, because it has ties to their best player.
You know, LeBron's going to get asked about it.
Sure.
I mean, the hoopla is over, right? And again, I'm cool with the hoopla in the beginning, having them both out in the court at the same time. I'm absolutely fine with it. But now it's like, okay, that's over. He belongs in the G League, like most second-round picks, to develop. So let's have him go develop. I just personally would love to know the answer. I mean, of why.
And again, Brian Windhorst and his reaction, he's been around this a lot longer. If he's saying, hey, I don't think this is in the best interest for Bronny or anybody involved here, I'm willing to take his word on that. And again, there could be a perfectly valid reason for this structurally. We just need to hear it, because right now this just invites all the speculation that we just did and a million other people are going to do about what the future for this young player looks like. Again, whose dad's coming off his third straight triple-double, so things still at least going well for the elder James there. Speaking of elders, coming up next, we're going to bring in old man / vampire Jason Fitz to take a look outside of the rest of the NFL next on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It's time for a little Better Yet before the big Thursday night football matchup. Better Yet's presented by Larceny Wheated Bourbon. Lock in a win and seize tonight. Bardstown, Kentucky, 46% alcohol by volume. Think wisely, drink wisely. Dad, you and I already made the pick. We had the commies going down to the Eagles over that 3.5-point number, so Philly covering there. Let's take a look at some of the props, though, here. The receiving props, certainly interesting there. A.J. Brown over under 82.5 yards. Devonta Smith over 52.5. But this Washington defense been better at the pass. I like Saquon Barkley over 95.5. I think this could be another trip over the century mark.
Is it 95.5 rushing yards or total yards?
95.5 rushing yards.
I'd still go over on that.
I would as well. We'll go over to the next hour with Jason Fitz next. Hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., the mustachioed Emerson Latzia, and our buddy Jason Fitz joining us today instead of on Wednesday here. You guys can check him out. Yahoo Sports Inside Coverage, the College Football Power Hour over there as well. Fitzy, how we doing this morning?
Man, I'm just wondering what it's like to be able to grow a mustache. I have no idea. Like it doesn't work for me at all. And and then like, are you able to grow it and actually be cool when you have a mustache, or are you automatically not allowed to drive a white van anywhere? Like there have to be mustache rules, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was telling the guys yesterday, I was in therapy, and my therapist, I was making a joke, like I'm not allowed within 300 yards of a playground, and then my therapist was like, more like 500 yards.
Yeah, that's fair. At least he owns it. I respect it. I respect the heck out of that. You know, I got rid of the hair on my head. Now I wish I could grow some hair on my face.
Yeah, man, I wish you were this mustache.
That's amazing. You're in your 50s and can't grow any facial hair, Jason.
I'm not quite my 50s, but look, y'all, I don't want to brag or anything. There was one day when we were working, like this is 3 days. This is 3 or 4 days right here. There was one day where we were working, I was working with GoJo, and I walked in one day, and Mike's like, oh, you didn't shave today. What he didn't know is it's been like 2 weeks. Like 2 weeks, and people are like, oh, man, you need to shave. That's what it takes. 2 weeks to just get a little bit of a tiny growth. This is coming in, no? I don't know.
So, Fitz, you've never rocked a mustache in your life then, correct?
Oh, God, no. No, my dad has a mustache. My dad has like a big, beefy, like mustache. And like, I don't know how he did that. I always did. I don't ever remember seeing my dad without a mustache. So like,
well,
you know,
we were talking about this earlier in the show, like things that people have never done in their life. Our producer Yates has never had coffee in his life as an adult man here. I have a buddy of mine, Dane, who has never chewed gum. He's a 35-year-old man, has never chewed gum in his entire life. Fitz, do you have anything weird like that besides the mustache?
I mean, I don't know how to ride a bike, Mike. It doesn't get more weird than that.
What?
Like, I've never ridden a bike.
I
have no idea.
about that.
No, I rode a bike once as a kid, and I was like, nah, this ain't for me. Like, that's it. My parents got me a bike for Christmas one year. I got on it. I was like, this is not fun. I enjoy nothing about this. I'm good. I'm out.
How is that possible?
You chose to not ride the bike anymore? I mean, weren't your friends riding bikes? I mean, what did you do? Try and run alongside them?
Senior, we've covered this. I was a fat kid that played the violin. I wasn't exactly knocking down the door with a bunch of friends, number one.
So you were on the pegs.
Two,
you were standing on the pegs.
Oh, yeah. And number two, let's be honest here, too. Like, when you grow, at least for me as a kid in Vegas, like, it's 100 and something degrees outside. Like, your insides cook at 8 in the morning. You're not really going around with your friends and riding bikes until the sun comes down. And that just wasn't really going to be a thing for me. So no, like, I never felt like I missed out. I've had friends recently that are like, we need to get you out in the park and we're going to teach you how to ride a bike. And I'm like, for what? I've made it 47 years. I don't know how to swim and I don't know how to ride a bike. Things are pretty good.
Wait. You don't know how to swim either?
How many things are you going to injured? I should have known.
Go outside.
Jason, of course. Like, we'd be like, oh, what quirky thing have you done? Have you not had a Diet Coke? Have you not tried sprinkles? And Jason's like, I can't swim or ride a bike.
I can't do things 95% of the human race can do.
Yeah. Okay, so in fairness, the swimming thing, I had a hole in my eardrum as a kid. They couldn't get patched over. So every time I put my head underwater, it got really bad.
That doesn't matter.
And so, you know, I had to go in and have a complete eardrum replacement surgery in my 20s. I'm a weird dude. And now, like, and then I tried to take swimming lessons a few years ago, and people are like, oh, just float. Okay, that's great advice when you grew up floating. If you have no idea how to float and you're an adult, you're like, how? No, and like, how am I supposed to float? And then everybody's like, well, take swim lessons. Okay, I signed up for swim lessons once a few years ago. I walk into the place, everybody else is like 2 years old, and I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, this is not for me either. This just doesn't, like,
dude.
I just can't do it.
Dude, if there's a zombie apocalypse, like, you're the first dude dead. Everyone's gonna be like, let's get on our bikes and get away from these zombies chasing us, and you're gonna be like, I don't know how to ride one. Then they're just gonna eat the hell out of you.
If there's a zombie apocalypse, I've said this for years. If there's a zombie apocalypse, I'm going to find all of the drugs and take them, because that's a better way to go than fighting for my survival every single day. I'm going to go in and just
hang with
get
you.
high and then just go. You know, like that's how I'm going to end.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not going to leave you behind, so I'll hang out with you.
Okay, perfect. See? We'll have a good time.
You work in content, and you have not once thought Jason's journey of learning how to ride a bike as a 47-year-old or you at swim class wouldn't be a great series that we would sign up for here. I mean, God, hashtag DK partner. Let's do this. Your buddies at Yahoo would probably green like that here. Swimming lessons with Jason. You can find a way to make this work here. And, oh, by the way, get a valuable life skill that would actually make you an asset in the zombie apocalypse. That's my number one red flag with people is when they just decide, oh, they would give up if all of a sudden the world went to hell tomorrow. You have no desire to win, no competitive instinct, no drive.
You would be the meat shield. We would just throw you to the zombies because you've given up.
Yeah.
Mike, I need both of you to clip this off and remember this forever, because you're right. You have made a great point I never thought of. This is going to be spectacular content. As everybody knows, I'm getting in the best shape of my life. So next summer, when I am in a thong or a Speedo showing the entire world my swimming journey, and Mike says, what are you wearing? This is your fault, Gojo. When I am Speedoed for America as I learn to swim, and it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be uncomfortable video footage. I'm going to have to pay somebody extra for the edits that are going to be done here. The world is going to see the rock and bod with the Speedo, with the thong. That's where we're going. Cheeks out while I figure out how to swim. It's going to happen. I might even wear the thong during the bike lessons too. Let's go.
I will once again volunteer to join you because I am a former junior lifeguard. So I need to be there to make sure that you are okay when you are swimming in your thong.
There we go. Mike, you created this monster. This is your fault. America can blame you specifically.
All right, well, I'll try and help America as best I can and get us away. This is now the second horrific visual to start an hour of the show that we've had to weather the storm for. So we let Emerson Latzia back in the building, and that's a mistake that we've got to own up for now. And Jason Fitz is much the same with us here. Fitzy, do you agree with the Colts putting Anthony Richardson back out there?
Yeah, because Flacco isn't any good. And they look, I don't agree with him being taken out in the first place because you had to have this long-term business plan when you drafted him, right? So at some point, if your wins above replacement is Flacco and you see the way it looks like, this isn't last year's Flacco. Last year's Flacco was kissed by a rose, right? It was fine. It was great. Like, great. Now you realize that this is not what you're dealing with in this generation, this iteration of him. So yeah, you put Anthony Richardson in and you just take your lumps. You had to know from the day that he was drafted that you were going to have to take lumps. So I think this is great. Let's figure out if the kid can actually play, if he gets more reps.
Yeah, I had no problem with them pulling him because you owed it to the other 52 in that locker room because the team, while we don't think they were a playoff team, they were in the playoff hunt, and you have to give your team the best shot. So I had no problem with them pulling Anthony Richardson once it's clear that Flacco wasn't going to. Listen, there's more issues on this team than just Joe Flacco. But once he lost a couple of games, and while they're still technically in the hunt, they're not really in the hunt. I'm absolutely – and now they go back to Anthony Richardson, Jason. They need to stay with him now for the entire rest of the season.
Yeah, they need to stay with him. And you make a very good point. As a former player, I think it's important to emphasize what it means for everybody else in the locker room. You're totally right about that. I just look at everything from, because I'm a nerd, from like, what's the long-term development plan on all this? So if you continue this sort of in and out with Anthony Richardson, I've interviewed him a couple of times. I've talked to him a few times for Yahoo. Look, he's not a kid that's devoid of confidence. So when we say, well, it's killing his confidence, at least it doesn't seem to be externally when you talk to him. But I do think that there's an element of in and out. You got to make sure that he knows that you believe in him as your long-term future if you do. So if they start some rotating door quarterback, any team that starts a rotating door quarterback in the NFL, all that means to me is everybody's about to get fired, right? So they've got to stick with Anthony Richardson now and figure out what they have, especially because if there are cracks in the armor, and this is the one thing I think we have to remember too, is the coaching staff, the GM, the front office, they see him every day. So if every day they're seeing him and they're starting to think, man, we might not have our guy, then you better find out right now before you go into next year's draft and you're evaluating quarterbacks again.
I also do think that it could be one of those things, and Anthony Richardson saying all the right things right now. Play is going to decide how successful this was or wasn't, and even then we won't know how much we can ascribe to, hey, this break where he learned how to work hard and be a pro's pro the way Shane Steichen's talking about. It all sounds good, but we have no idea until we on the outside get to see it, to Jason's point there. But we've seen in other places right now, again, small sample sizes here, but similar situations. Bryce Young went out for a few games. Andy Dalton goes in there as starter because he's drowning, because they are an abject disaster there in Carolina. And now he's come back after Andy Dalton's been out doing with the side effects of that car accident. And Bryce Young's played a little bit better. And he started to look more like the quarterback there. And so I do think we also need to be realize that, hey, early on, while it seems like the sky's falling for us and everything's a binary, and if they move on from a guy for a couple of weeks, are they throwing him to the trap heap? That might not be the case. That being said, Fitz, Chicago's an interesting case for this because they just fired Shane Waldron as their OC, and we had heard some reports from some guys out there in Chicago that there were even players in the locker room saying, hey, maybe give Tyson Bagent a look and sit the kid down for a little bit here. Caleb Williams, #1 overall pick from this last draft, has had highs and lows this season. Where do you think he falls on that spectrum of guys that could either use a breather or guys that just need to weather the storm?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I believe so much in Caleb long term. I hope he can weather the storm. I think the problem here is, and I said this on social media at the time, let's remember that the Raiders and the Bears both brought Cliff Kingsbury in and both elected not to hire him. Now, reports where he wanted longer contracts for more money. That looks like a pretty stupid way to save money right now because Cliff Kingsbury had the right plan for JAYDEN from the outset. That has not been the case for Caleb Williams. And I do think that you have to have a little understanding. We even saw that in Houston when a few weeks into the season, they measured back and they said, we're going to do more play action at the beginning of CJ Stroud. We're going to figure out a way to sort of integrate him that sort of unfolds it piece by piece. It wasn't that way in the beginning, but it was by the early portion of the season. I don't feel like they've ever done that with Caleb. And so now you have a quarterback that this is something we all talk about when we cover college football. What were your tendencies in college and how do they translate to the pros? Well, running backwards to try and figure out how to save a play that's not there to be made is something that Caleb Williams did really successfully at college. And if you talk to people that studied him in college, one of the big faults on him was he made easy plays difficult. You got to coach that out of him. Sometimes it was right there for him, and instead he would wait to try and find something better. And it worked for him at college. Will it work in the pros? What have we seen over the last few weeks? Like he's some of these sacks that he's getting credited for, the Bears are getting credit for. He should buy offensive lineman cars because he's back there running around, not at his release point. He's at a spot where he's not supposed to be throwing the football. Like he is putting that offense at risk. So they're going to have to figure out how to coach him better on discipline from the outset. And I think, Mike, part of that is simplifying the playbook, make him do less, let him read less. Put stuff in front of him that's to read out, get rid of the football, and force him to sort of work on that habit.
Thomas Brown is the new OC, was a passing game coordinator. You know, players are going to be asked about him. Their receiver, DJ Moore, was asked about Thomas Brown's philosophy.
We want to play the sound of that.
Yeah. That was the lead to the sound, guys.
Although I
really
don't know if our crew is ready for that right now because that was segments ago we were supposed to have that sound up. So in the meantime, I'll just say DJ Moore had some comments on that. They were what they were, and we'll move on from here. Fitzy, the Kansas City Chiefs sitting at the top of the NFL right now. You buying them as the best team in the NFL? You see them in the AFC West all the time. Does that work for you? Or do you think the Detroit Lions deserve that mantle?
I think the Detroit Lions are the best team in the league, but if I had to bet my house, I am not betting against Kansas City. Whatever deal they made with the devil, I would like an appointment. I would like to be able to go in and make one. All right. Like, because frankly, we talk about how the Chiefs are broken every single week, but the fact is when you have the best quarterback, the best coach, the best defensive coordinator, and probably the best GM in the league all on one team at one time, you're not going to win a lot of blowout games. You're going to have to beat them in a close game. And we all know you don't beat Mahomes in a close game. I don't understand it. Like, I agree with everybody that the Lions on paper look better, but every team on paper almost every week seems to look better than the Chiefs. And then they just laugh at us, evil, maniacal laugh as they walk out of the building with the win every time. I don't know how it's happening. And it makes no sense to my brain. But I also, at some point, just can't bet against it. I just, if I had to bet my house right now on a neutral field, Super Bowl matchup, Lions, Chiefs, I can't bet against the Chiefs because all they have done every single week when they look like they shouldn't is win football games. But I believe in my heart of hearts that the Lions are a more complete football team. They're a better football team, and they are built in a way that should push the Chiefs in a way that can beat them. I can't bet against Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, 15 wins in a row. They do play the Bills. I mean, it's going to be, a hell of a game with two great quarterbacks. I just think, Mike, they can't hang on to this. I don't want to say luck because it's obviously skill that has them undefeated, but they just seem like they're living on the edge, and they're going to fall at some point. Would not be surprised if it's this week to the Bills.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be kind of trying to handicap from here on out who has the best chance. Is it the Bengals because they've got all this familiarity with beating the Chiefs and showed early in the season they can get close? Is it the Baltimore Ravens and what their offense has become really since their game against Fitz's Las Vegas Raiders? Is it the Bills? Is it somebody else out there? We can certainly try and legislate that conversation as we go forward here and try and figure out who's going to knock off the champs in the NFL. Coming up next, though, we probably need to have this conversation about college football. Fitzy, you can stick around with us here and we can talk about what we got from the latest college football playoff rankings reaction there. Week 2 of the committee's rankings next on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We'll get to a little look ahead of college football this weekend. Tennessee, Georgia, the big game that highlighted by the recent college football playoff polls. We've got all sorts of weird SEC implications we want to get to with our buddy Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports analyst and host, kind enough to stick around with us for a second segment here today. But we got to talking a little bit in the break about some of what we've seen. You know, John Gruden has just announced going over and starting to show a Barstool Sports, trying to figure out if John Gruden's ever a guy that's going to coach again in the NFL. And it got us thinking in general about maybe the next wave of coaches. You know, John Gruden's got the lawsuit with the NFL. Brian Flores is a guy who's probably going to be a candidate for a bunch of upcoming jobs based on what he's done with the Vikings defense this season. And that's wild to think about considering we went through the whole back and forth with him and Tua earlier in the season, like forgetting even the lawsuit. The lawsuit,
exactly.
Yeah. No, I mentioned that, but like, forgetting even that, we had a back and forth earlier this season where Tua Tagovailoa talked about how he felt like he was basically mistreated by Brian Flores during his time in Miami. And so, Fitz, looking out now, we've got a second head coaching or one head coach fired already in what we've got in the New York Jets. We've had an offensive coordinator change in Chicago that feels like it's the death rattle towards that whole staff being moved on from. And already the conversation started from a lot of people of, all right, the names that will be in this coaching cycle this upcoming season here. Do you think Brian Flores is ultimately a guy? He said he came out the other day and said he would like to be a head coach again in this league. Do you think that's going to work given the background of drop of his lawsuit with the league?
I don't think you can no. To answer your question, simply no. I don't think Brian Flores is going to get another shot as a head coach as long as he's suing the league. And this comes down to just a very human element for anybody listening. Like, Mike, if you and I tomorrow were starting a brand new show and we wanted to come out and we wanted to hire any producer in the world, and in the process of interviewing all the producers in the world, there was one producer that was really good, but you also find out that they have a massive lawsuit against one of your best friends. You're going to be willing to take that? Now, I know owners aren't best friends, but I do think that there's an element of owners are in business together. So now you've got somebody that has sued the very business that is how you feed your family, and you're a part of that lawsuit in some ancillary way. If you're an owner in the NFL, like if there's a settlement on this, it comes out of your pocket. So now you're being asked to hire somebody that is suing you from a business standpoint to do this other job. I just don't think that that's going to, I think he would have to settle his lawsuits with the NFL. He'd have to find a way for that to go away before an owner is going to hire him.
Yeah, and maybe that will happen because he's certainly from production on the field would probably deserve another shot, though it was a failure in Miami. And,
well, I mean, they were productive on the field, though, when he was the head coach in Miami. Let's not get that twisted.
And the relationship with him and Tua, and it's not to say a guy can't learn,
sure,
from his possible mistakes that he felt he made. It's just a matter of he'll get a chance. We talked about John Gruden signing with the long-term deal with Barstool.
I have no idea.
Multi-year deal.
But if John Gruden will ever coach again, and I think he will. I think there will be a coach, Emerson, that will hire him to be an assistant in the NFL.
For sure, Senior. And Boomer Esiason said just yesterday that he has spoken with sources. He can confirm that Gruden is interested in being an NFL head coach again. And he also said that teams have expressed interest and has reached a point now where he is confident that if Gruden doesn't become a head coach this upcoming offseason, he certainly will be in 2026. So these are two complicated cases at the same time, though.
Yeah, and Gruden's a bit the same.
I mean,
I would just say I know the people I've talked to have said Gruden's been offered a boatload of money to settle his lawsuits to get the NFL and has no interest in that because he wants to clear his name. I don't know that you can have a massive lawsuit against the league where you're still in the state Supreme Court in Nevada trying to figure out whether this goes to mediation or whether or not they can go to court. He wants to go to court so the records are public. I'm not sure you can out the NFL in public court records and then still expect one of those 32 owners that you're trying to out in that process to then give you a ton of money to be the head coach.
I guess in my case, and maybe they find a way in both cases to settle something if it push came to shove and that was going to happen, because we live in the league where Deshaun Watson got signed to one of the richest quarterback contracts in history. And so if a team is desperate enough for someone to come in that they feel like would be a steadying hand, we know that the NFL especially, and listen, college is no different there. There are plenty of schools that I'm sure would have taken that potentially as the out there. Dad, turn your TV off. What are you doing?
What?
It just does.
Going on?
It does
what
that.
Kind of setup is this?
It does that occasionally. It goes, it takes a break, and then it comes back.
What
I
channel?
think it has to refresh.
What channel was that?
I don't
buddy?
understand technology.
Huh. Could have been worse.
Had a whole thing going
Blinking
here,
VCR
and
number.
going on in the background.
I mean, you let it interrupt. You can't let it distract you. You got to stay
I'm
focused.
just letting people into what goes on over here in this ragtag operation.
You're sitting in one of the nicest studios that's not a studio that you've ever been in. Better than your apartment that you have where we're all cramped together, which we're going to have to do on Monday.
Wow.
When I call the Chargers
I'm going to feel
game.
great because I have a nice chair in that apartment.
We're going to be cramped.
What's it like to be in Junior's apartment?
You got a dish of scrambled eggs and toast and sausage.
Well, that part was great, but that's the mom part. That's not the you part.
It comes with the whole package. It's the whole package.
I don't think you get to take credit for mom's contributions.
We are. Your mother and I are a team.
Oh, that's true.
Man, that's a team. That's a team in the same way that, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the most lopsided pairing in NBA.
That's not nice.
Team, you know what? It's a team the way you and Reggie White were a team.
Oh, wow. Wow.
See? You guys both contributed a lot of important stuff to what you guys did on the field.
Yeah, you will.
Says the academic All-American.
Bald.
Says the academic All-American. Go ahead.
There we go. All right, Fitzy, let's go back over to the world of academia and college football. You and I have spent a lot of time covering the college football playoff together, and we always said there were a couple of hard and fast rules you could really follow with the 14 playoff. Now 2 weeks into the CFP committee dealing in the 12-team playoff era, is there anything that stuck out to you in terms of things that you can start to see as potential trends with them?
Yeah, I think all losses aren't created equal. There's still part of this, like the Tennessee loss to Arkansas is viewed substantially differently, and bad losses outweigh good wins, because you can truly make an argument. I mean, look at Ohio State's schedule. They have obviously, look at Penn State's schedule. They have one good loss, and who's their signature win against? So, this argument we have every year about good losses versus signature wins, also, it's a very eye test committee. It still is. Like, you can't sit here and tell me it's all about wins and losses and tell me that Army's the number 24 team in the country. I know that's low, but then you've got Indiana way up there. And everybody says, well, the eye test. I don't know. You play the 100th ranked schedule. For me, this whole thing is so hard to try and figure out this year, particularly because you have a team like Indiana that looks really good, but they played absolutely nobody. And you have a team like Georgia that everybody wants to say sucks because they've lost 2 games, but they played the hardest schedule in the country. And so this committee likes offense. This committee likes offense that looks easy. And this committee does not like bad losses.
Yeah, well, and I think, Fitz, you underscored it there, too, and we've said the committee really values strength of schedule. And I think this goes back to, I got a chance to talk to Clay Helton. I was doing a Georgia Southern game earlier this year, and we asked him, what do you think a group of 5 team has to do to make waves in this current college football playoff field? And he said, you've got to be special. And right now, you look at a team like Boise State, that's the highest ranked group of 5 team. They were special, and their one opportunity, their best win is a close loss to Oregon right now. That's the reality of their situation. And so you've got a special player to go along with that in Ashton Genty, but people got to see them side by side with one of the best teams in the country in Oregon, the number 1 ranked team right now. And it looked pretty good, and so that buys them a lot of cachet. You also look at their strength of schedule at 68th as opposed to Army that's 133rd. Now, Army is going to have their version of that when they play Notre Dame in a couple of weeks at Yankee Stadium, and that's really when I would pay attention to, all right, if Army were to beat Notre Dame, then what are we talking about in terms of that? Now, all of a sudden, do they jump up and climb and get a little bit more respect because of that? But Fitz, usually we talked about strength of resume, like the likelihood of the average team going out and accomplishing your schedule and having the same record. But I do think just the strength of schedule period right now seems to be the defining factor in the way the committee's legislated a lot of this.
Yeah, and my issue with Army isn't that they're that low. My issue with Army is that an undefeated Army team that hasn't played the best strength of schedule is below a Missouri team that, frankly, has looked like trash half the year. I mean, Missouri has not looked good in their wins. Missouri has been a bad football team more than they've been a good football team, and the committee continues to prop them up. So those are the moments that I sit here and I get a little confused about what we're looking for. Miami, in fairness, Miami is another team that has hung on by the skin of their teeth over and over and over again. They finally take a loss. And I thought that'd be a moment for the committee to be like, aha, finally you got bit in the butt by something. And instead, Miami didn't fall nearly as far as I thought Miami would fall. So it's an interesting committee on what they value and how they value it. Because I thought the Miami loss was pretty inexcusable last week. And it sort of cemented the conversation we've been having all year of, is Miami for real, or is Miami just waiting to be exposed for their terrible defense? And what do you know? It turns out they were waiting to be exposed, but the committee still valued them. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Mike.
Well, I mean, the biggest drop was obviously Georgia. They're actually out. They're at 12, but they're out because Boise State would be in. So are you surprised at that, at Georgia? They fell 9 spots to being now out of the top 12, even though they're 12th again. They'll be out.
So, look, I picked Ole Miss in that game on the College Football Power Hour on Yahoo Sports. I picked Ole Miss to win that game. I picked Tennessee to beat Georgia this week. I think Georgia's going to end up out of the college football playoff. So I do think that's going to happen. However, this system, and I know nobody cares because football works itself out. But what you just said, Mike, is significant to me. I still think it's weird that Georgia was the number 12 team and would be out of the college football playoff because we're putting Boise State in because a group of 5 gets an automatic bid. And to me, Neutral field right now, I don't know. Boise State might be better, but the committee just told you they think Georgia's a better football team than Boise State, which they can easily do because Boise State's going to pop right over. It just feels broken to me already that we're 2 rankings in. And if the college football playoff started today, the top 12 wouldn't actually make the college football playoff. I don't understand what the hell we're doing. And I have a hard time, as bad as Carson Beck is, as bad and as poorly as they've run the football, and as bad as that offense has been at times, I understand all of the failings for Georgia. I truly do. Do I believe Georgia is a bad football team? No. Do I think right now Georgia is probably a top 12 football team? Probably. I just think they're taking on an Ole Miss team that is better than it was getting credit for. They're about to take on a Tennessee team that's been better than Georgia almost all year. They're going to lose those games, and that's when this whole Georgia conversation goes off the rails.
Any worry about Nico Iamaleava, injury status for this weekend? We've heard he was in concussion protocol. Does any of that brush you back off the fastball a bit?
It brushes me back a little bit, but then, Mike, we all know the committee's allowed to factor who was and wasn't available in games. And Tennessee's defensive line is the reason they're going to win this game. Tennessee's defense has been better than their offense all year. And the depth on their defensive line, their ability to rotate guys in and out, Ole Miss's defensive line absolutely took Georgia back behind the watershed and made them regret life decisions, right? I believe that. So now I've got a Tennessee defensive line that's even deeper, that's going to be able to just rotate guys in and out. They're going to give that Georgia offense absolute fits. I don't think Tennessee's going to have to score a lot of points to win this game. Even without Nico, I still think it's a close game. And if Tennessee loses a close game to Georgia without their starting quarterback, Tennessee will get cred and Georgia will not. They will not get the credit that they deserve in that win.
So to finish up, do you think that eventually conference champs will not get the top 4 automatic bids? Because right now BYU's at 6, they would jump to 3. Miami's at 9, they would jump to 4, and it would just because of the conference champs getting the top 4 spots.
Yeah, I think conference champions, the minute the Big Ten and the SEC take full control of this whole thing, they'll get rid of that because they don't really care about everybody else. But that's years down the line. Right now, what I think has to happen immediately is conference championship games need to be completely eliminated because we are in a very weird worst case scenario where all of a sudden a team, that can eke their way into the conference championship game is going to take a loss. And now all of a sudden, what if you pick up your 3rd loss of the year in the SEC championship game? And all of a sudden, all these other 2-loss teams that didn't play in the SEC championship game are going to make the college football playoff ahead of you because they don't have 3 losses. And I genuinely believe that's going to happen. So the risk of playing in the championship game is not worth the reward of it. I think they should get rid of conference championship games and simply reward the regular season champion.
Yeah, the conference championship games, especially now that we've gone divisionless in every conference but the Sun Belt, has created some really in a sport that already has such uneven scheduling and that presents so many challenges in analyzing these teams because everyone's playing such wildly disparate schedules out of conference. This has only made it even more difficult this year with the way we've shaken up the bags on conference play here. Thanks for swimming in the deep end with us today, Fitzy. Everyone check Jason out over at Yahoo at Jason Fitz on Twitter. Cannot ride a bike, cannot swim, but can talk about sports. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, boys. Appreciate you. I'm going to go get a thong.
Oh, God.
Just terrifying here. That was the one thing. We went to Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I don't know if they still do it now, but used to make you take the swim test when you got to campus. And I almost had teammates that were going to leave rather than get in the pool and try and go out there and swim. So Jason Fitz apparently needs to get thrown in there. We're going to have to put him out there with my niece Alex.
All right, folks, the Twitter streets have absolutely been erupting over a certain tweet floating around. It's an anonymous confession, which is always one of my favorites. This one, I'm sure, GoJo and Mr. G is going to get you two going, especially after Mrs. G made you guys delicious breakfast this morning. So I need to know if this is fair or if this is foul right now. Here is the post, okay? So it's from a lady who is talking about gaslighting her husband when they fight, and this is how she does it. Let me read this to you very quickly. This isn't anything crazy, just something funny that I want to tell people about, but can't risk getting caught. My husband and I have been together for 8 years. For the past couple of years, I make him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day to take to work. I use Welch's Grape Concord jelly. This is important for later. Every day he tells me that I make the best sandwiches, and I just say, I make it with love. However, when we're fighting, he always says he can taste the difference in his PB&J. And I say, because I made it with hate. But the truth is, he can taste the hate in the sandwich because when we fight, I use organic, sugar-free grape jam. It's in the back of the fridge, and he's never seen it. So it's what I use to convince him that he can't make me mad or my anger makes food taste different. Wow.
Yeah, well, genius. And so this is from the Reddit thread, the True Off My Chest, where people can go in and kind of confess these things anonymously. Dad, this is a genius move, and honestly, something I'd wondered for years if Mom was classically conditioning you anywhere, because there are so many things you just don't understand about the process of what goes on in the home that Mom takes care of. She could very easily hide things like this and use them to manipulate your feelings to get what she wants.
This just goes to show, and you and Emerson are not out of this, that guys are an inch deep and a mile wide. All right? We're an inch deep and a mile wide.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what it is. I think this is like a learned helplessness in this case where this guy's outsourced the making of his lunch just the same way. Like, Mom could put something different in the eggs that she brings out here every morning. And if she's mad at you, all of a sudden, instead of salt and pepper, it might be sugar on top of that. And you're sitting here and it's just enough sugar where you're not sure, but it's a little sweet and it's weird. And things are a little bit off so that you change your tune with whatever you've been doing.
Again, an inch deep and a mile wide that I wouldn't see or taste the difference of.
No, you would taste the difference, but you wouldn't
but I wouldn't
see
figure it out.
Yeah.
It's exactly right, because I just kind of say, oh, well, yeah, she's mad at me. She made it with hate. And just buy into that instead of using my man brain and figuring out that the jelly is different. Because I use Concord or Welch's grape jelly for sure. And there is sugar-free that's in the fridge that every now and then, to make myself feel good about the fact that I'm diabetic, I use. But you can definitely taste the difference.
Sure.
So guys just give in. Right?
Don't lump the rest of us in with your lack of discerning taste. I've been a single father of none for 35 years now, and so I've had to go out here and work 2 jobs and try and do all these things by myself as I make my life in my home. And so I've learned skills the likes of which you could never possibly imagine.
You, as a single guy, say you went out to breakfast at the same place every morning, you would get fooled by said waitress if she wanted to mess with you. You would get fooled. Oh, yeah, you would. Yeah,
I have to be aware of what's going on because at those points, I had no one else to look out for me and watch my back in those spots. And so I had to be aware of what was going on. And plus, I'm someone that cooked breakfast for myself all the time, was doing all of those things here now. So this is a you thing, big guy. This is you.
Yeah. So
Emerson, I lump all guys together.
Yeah, this is clearly a woman sending a very strong message to her partner, her significant other. Is there something Mrs. G makes you, Senior, that if something was just a little bit off, you know that she would be sending you a message?
No.
Everything.
Yeah.
No, now, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that she doesn't do things. God knows the piece of papers that I've signed that she has said, here, sign this, sign this. I don't know what I'm signing.
That's a great point, yeah.
I mean, I have no idea. Just kind of like my contracts at work. I didn't read them. I have no idea but at least I have an agent for that. When I'm with my wife, when I'm with Chris, it's just like, sign it. I'm like, okay, I could have zero money. A zero. I could have nothing.
See, that's the point. That's why you can't
Yeah.
lump all of us in together.
Christine and
Because
I
we're
are
not
running
all
away
like
together.
that. I haven't done that. I read everything.
Okay, I lump guys in some cases.
I think you're just trying to make yourself feel better.
I am. I absolutely am, because I've given in to my wife running the show. And you know what? It's a better move. It's a year into this marriage. We've been married 37, going on 38 years. Year one, I gave in.
Yeah.
I let her gave in. I didn't have a choice. Let her make the decisions. Let her run it, man. Let her run it. And then the two things. A, there's no pressure on me to run it. And B, I forgot B. B.
There you go. Mom
that's
probably
why
is in
you
charge
have
of B.
her.
But A's,
You have her there to remind you when you forget B, what B is.
yes. That's exactly right.
I will say this, this one is incredible, and I'm sure plenty of people can identify with this, because there are certain things when you start to get into a relationship that you kind of divide up amongst yourself in terms of, hey, what someone does to the other, what the nice thing that someone does there. And so I do appreciate this woman weaponizing a thing that's clearly like a kind gesture. Like, hey, she makes her husband a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day for 8 years. That's a sweet thing to do.
Yeah.
It's nice for her to still kind of pull back the reins every once in a while, remind her who daddy is.
How does he fall for that? How does he
Remind
not
him who daddy is.
How does he not taste the difference? I
Yeah.
mean, there's
he
there's
does
a clear
taste the difference, but he's not. He tastes the difference,
Again,
but he's
he's-
not discerning enough to see.
He's buying into the hate part of it. He's buying into, oh, she must be mad at me, and it was made with hate instead of love. I mean, seriously.
Yeah,
I mean-
who believes that?
I mean, listen, everything on the internet is true, so you should believe that here. I say that especially after last night, since we're fully off the rails in this segment. I went and saw Sabrina Carpenter last night out in Arizona,
yeah.
which, first off, incredible show. The short and sweet tour, spectacular, awesome album that she just came out with. Great showmanship. I thought the Eras tour from Taylor Swift had sort of broken my brain in terms of what you can reasonably expect from a concert, because in terms of production, I don't know if I'll see anything like the Eras tour again in my life in terms of what they put on wax. But Sabrina was awesome. It was great, but it also lived up to everything I had seen and heard. You've seen a bunch of those internet videos where it's 14-year-old girls at these concerts scream singing every lyric. And I thought, oh, ha, that's funny. That's once in a blue moon. That was everyone around me for the entirety of the night. Sabrina Carpenter has got some pretty explicit lyrics, some pretty adult lyrics, talks about lying to her therapist in one of them. And these 12-year-old kids, I don't know what they have been through in their 12 years on Earth, but man, they were singing those lyrics like they had just gone through the worst heartbreak of their life.
Here's the thing. There were 4 of you there. You were probably like at a Taylor Swift concert singing the lyrics. I know one person who wasn't. My daughter Sydney's husband, Ben.
Yes.
Ben Broniker, who's in in med school, played at Harvard, played with the Bears. I don't know if he knew a song, a Sabrina Carpenter song. So he was sitting there with all the screaming teenagers around him. His head had to want to explode.
You know what? It's a cultural experience. It's an exchange of good. Normally he's hanging out with med school students all day, and instead he got to hang out with an arena full of very, emotional people enjoying the majesty of song. And Sabrina Carpenter, who, man, like seeing Kevin Hart in person, you're just overwhelmed. Like NBA players, you're amazed at how tall they are when you actually get to a game and see them in
she's
person,
short, right?
how tall and skinny. She is tiny, like might be sub 5 foot tiny. She's one of the smallest performers. Again, honestly, Kevin Hart, hashtag DK partner, might be the only shorter celebrity entertainer that I've ever seen in person.
Speaking of short celebrity entertainer, I enjoyed the picture you posted of that elf from the Sabrina Carpenter gathering. You posted on Twitter, the elf on all fours.
Apparently that was the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport leaning into it. There's a song called Juno. We're on this tour. Sabrina Carpenter, one of the parts of the song is they talk about freaky sex stuff and doing different positions. And
you have my attention.
In part of the show, it's become sort of a ritual where she goes out and debuts a new position during that point of the song every time. And I just thought the elf at the Phoenix Airport
look at this
that
thing.
was, kind of throwing it in a circle here. I thought the elf might have been getting in on the Sabrina Carpenter love a little bit.
Yeah, look at that guy. Look at that elf. That elf's like, bring it, Zaddy.
Emerson, I would be careful about showing your computer to the camera.
This is a
when
work
the tabs
computer.
might be open on that thing.
I don't go to weird websites on work computers.
Yeah, HR already has speed dial for your number.
Oh,
so.
buddy, I have a weekly meeting with them. I'm tight. I can introduce you to my friends at HR.
All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third, 3 quick stories, send you the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Make sure you check us out, GoJo and Golic YouTube channel as well. Still new, we got the 500 subscriber mark in the rear view, so the march to 1,000 begins now. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, smash the bell so you get the alerts when we're on in the morning here. But if you can't catch us live or any of our great guests, shout out to Yahoo Sports' Jason Fitz for stopping by, talking a little college, a little NFL, admitting that he can't swim and ride a bike. It was a very busy morning with Jason. So if you missed any of that, you can check it out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Guys, let's start off with this, that, and the third. With this breaking news and something that the Lakers, I'm sure, hope actually happens IRL. For the first time in NBA 2K history, LeBron James is not the highest overall ranking on his own team. Wow. LeBron James at a 95, now been overtaken by Anthony Davis, who, Dad was, the leading scorer in the NBA in the early going of the season. A little bit of an injury that put a slower governor on that, but he's been sensational, and the Lakers could only hope.
I was going to say, you could only hope that somebody younger actually has a higher rating than LeBron and plays better than LeBron, and AD is going to be that guy if he can stay on the court for any amount of time. He always gets nicked up every year, but that is a rarity. That's pretty wild, too. It took till 39 years old.
I was just going to say, he's a biscuit shy of 40 right now, fresh off of his third straight triple-double, another 30-point triple-double. The amount of effort, and everyone's lauded that. I saw Ryan Russillo just tweeting about this. We've heard the conversations from others, but JJ Redick even highlighted it. The effort that you still get from LeBron James in all phases of the game really leaves no room for excuses from anyone else on that team, because LeBron's always been more talented, better player, all those things from people, but now he's an almost 40-year-old man, so he's got the things and limitations with his body that show up even just a relative standard for him. And so if you're a guy not giving great effort or not having attention to detail, and you've got that going on late in these games here, then you're going to get the riot act read to you, and deservedly so, Emerson.
Yeah, fun fact. So his rookie year, NBA 2K, rated 78. Then he was 88 as a sophomore, and then never fell below 94 after that.
Wow. Yeah. It's been that kind of career for that dude, and we're almost numb to it at this point, and every once in a while something shakes us loose to remind us that we shouldn't be. The dude's been excellent.
That's the truth. He is, and quite honestly, between him and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, the elder statesmen who are playing well.
The first place Suns in the Western Conference, the Golden State Warriors that have been one of the darlings. You know what? The Olympic run might have been one of those things that was like a catalyst for all of them, where you looked up and said, all right, this is supposed to be, Anthony Edwards taking over and some of the young guys on this roster. And it turned out to be that big three of great players, with Steph being the one to finish it off.
It did. We saw Steph already rolled an ankle earlier this year. Durant's out with the calf, so LeBron's playing. But if those guys can pretty much stay somewhat healthy, it's going to be different when that old guard is gone.
Well, because we had the playoffs this year. It was the first time in the second round in what felt like, I think, a decade where we hadn't had LeBron, Steph, or Clay as a part of the second round of the postseason. And we thought, all right, well, now it's time to get ready for all that. And while, listen, the focus is still going to be for a lot of people on the Denver Nuggets, the Minnesota Timberwolves with Karl Anthony Towns.
Well.
But I guess that's what I'm saying is, we thought those teams were going to take over, and these guys, maybe even if it's just one last ride, maybe this is more fleeting than it's been, it's still damn impressive given where they all are at this point in their career. Emerson, let's get to that. The Chicago Blackhawks paying homage to one of my favorite movies, and I'd have to imagine a movie that's right up your alley, too, and Emerson, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, dude, like Billy and I and Jay, about 5 years ago in Chicago, too, we did an Emerson's Day Off where we recreated a lot of these epic scenes from Ferris Bueller, but Connor Bedard here, he's kind of a generational player, a lot like LeBron, has a lot of pressure entering this league, had a hell of a year last year, and now, as you see on your screen, this iconic scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Chicago Magazine recreating it at the Art Institute of Chicago with Connor Bedard, now in his sophomore campaign. Pretty epic, pretty beautiful, and a movie that will live in infamy.
Yeah, and the jersey Cameron wore, the character, was actually a Detroit Red Wings jersey. It was Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe provided it to the filmmaker, so it was a Detroit Red Wing jersey. But Connor Bedard, pretty cool, stepping in front, looking at the picture, recreating the scene. I mean, in what was just a fantastic movie.
It's a fantastic movie. It's also an old movie, though.
86.
And Connor Bedard is what? He is 19 years old. So
yeah.
I think there's any chance, like, was that part of the onboarding process there that he's even seen Ferris Bueller?
I would guess he has not seen Ferris
you
Bueller.
have
They're
to
just
see
like,
it.
hey, put this jersey on and go stand in front of this picture.
Bro, the night that he was drafted by that team, if he had not seen that movie, it should have been the first thing the front office said. Hey, kid, before we get into contract details, all the stuff on the ice, go watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off right now, or we will not be signing you. That's what I would have done.
I do wonder if, like, what the movie you most associate with each city is, right? Because in Boston, you've got, a coach that's addicted to watching the town.
Yeah.
And you've got a bunch of movies that are set there. Like, some cities certainly have more options. You'd have a ton to work with in New York to try and think of that.
California.
But what is the most quintessential movie of each city? And is Ferris Bueller that for Chicago?
Yeah, or Home Alone, right? Home Alone's got to be up there. Weren't they a Chicago-based company or a Chicago-based family?
I
think
did
so.
not like Home Alone.
What do you?
Yeah,
what
I
do
didn't
you,
either.
didn't
Just
like
doesn't do it for me.
What the
Didn't
hell
like
are you
it.
talking about? Like you don't like it?
Didn't like it.
Why?
Didn't like it.
Macaulay Culkin, very pale.
Didn't.
Are you
didn't
serious?
Do it for me.
You're the first two people.
Nope.
Yeah.
I will say 2's better than 1. Home Alone 2's better than 1, but you got to be kidding me. It's an original.
If I didn't
paved the way.
if I didn't get into the first one,
Right.
I certainly wasn't watching the second one.
Oh, but you would get
How many
much
were
more than
there?
the second one. There were, I don't know, there's been like 7. The last 4 have been to DVDs,
And
boxes.
listen, also, I'm all for, like, dramatic conceits when it comes to a movie, suspending disbelief, getting into the narrative universe. But, like, at some point, did CPS get called on these parents? Like, how can you let that happen twice?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a whole nother story. But there was a nice homeless lady in the second one who was friends with all the pigeons in Central Park who was able to help Kevin kind of find his family again and fill the hole in his heart.
All right, well, all right, spoiler alert, but, that's fine. You can just get away with
Spoiler
that. if you
alert,
want,
buddy.
so.
I'm sorry.
Why
If
not?
you haven't seen it, it came out 30 freaking years ago. That's on you, pal.
Why don't you just spoil Ferris Bueller's Day Off as well?
Okay, just so you guys know, he had a hell of a day off.
He had a great day off. All right, Emerson, let's finish up with the third and a great day on the hardwood for Isaac Okoro, who had a very interesting pair of sneakers. Oh, by the way, the Cavaliers are still undefeated.
Yes, they certainly are. They are 13-0, my guy. And the last bomb of Woj's career was about Isaac Okoro agreeing on a 3-year, $38 million deal to stay with the Cavaliers. So he decided to honor himself by being Woj's final Woj bomb with these kicks last night. Again, their 13th win of the season, 13-0 against the lowly 76ers.
Yeah, it's on the heels of the shoe. It has like a bomb, an actual like a
I
red
see
bomb.
that. Yeah, it
with
kind of looks like a
fuse coming out
cherry.
of it.
Looks like a cherry, but yeah, I can see the bomb.
But it's got, I guess it. I
does
guess it
kinda
kind of
look like a
does.
cherry,
Yes, it
yeah.
kind of does.
I think food. You guys do too.
Yeah, that's true. I don't like cherries, but still, it does look like a cherry.
What? Or you don't
Good
like
for
real
him, though. Had
cherries?
9
I think
points in the
cherries.
game last night. They go out winning. What an honor to be the last Woj bomb, as we talked about the end of Woj's prolific career. Shams now replacing him at ESPN. The rivalry no longer exists out there. I wonder if Woj, like, what it's like for him, his relationship with his cell phone. Because people always talk about that with young people. We all chastise teenagers and talk to them about their relationship with their phone. Being an insider for as long as Woj is, you've got the unhealthiest relationship with your phone humanly possible. So I wonder how he's gone about trying to remedy that. I remember one time in the ESPN cafeteria, I saw him and Adam Schefter having lunch together in the caf, and there wasn't a phone on the table. And I'm like, what if something happens? Who's going to break the news?
Wow. I'm sure he's on the phone a lot less and for different reasons to St. Bonaventure.
Yeah.
Taking over that program.
You think every once in a while he just likes to mess with someone, like text an old GM or something they used to talk about and just put the fear of God in their hearts?
Yeah, maybe some of them think, oh, he's back.
Yeah, you
He's
guys want to
back
know a
and
fun
better than
fact?
ever.
My wife was a Division I cheerleader at St. Bonaventure.
Really?
Bonnie.
Yeah, she was
Bonnie.
Bonnie. Yeah, she was top of that pyramid, man. Just tossing her Toss it
There we
out
go.
there.
Her and Adrian Wojnarowski, just two very important Bonnies making waves out here, but only one has to deal with a mustachioed Emerson, and so she gets the crown here. We appreciate you guys for putting up with Emerson and us. If you enjoyed it, download, subscribe, rate, review us. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.